Don't check out of the villa yet. Your husband doesn't know you found the receipt, and if he finds out you know, you won't make it home." She said it so quietly I almost thought I'd imagined it. Just a woman in a white resort uniform, folding towels by the pool cart, not even looking at me when she said it. I stood there in my wet swimsuit with a piña colada sweating in my hand, and the whole world just stopped. My name is Silvana Okafor. 3 weeks earlier, I had married the man I thought was the love of my life. We were on our honeymoon in Turks and Caicos. 7 days at a private villa resort, the kind with a plunge pool on the terrace and breakfast delivered on a wooden tray with fresh flowers. The kind of trip you save screenshots of for 2 years before it becomes real. I had been happy. Genuinely, stupidly, completely happy. His name is my husband. That's what I'll call him because that's what he was. For exactly 23 days. I want to tell you I had doubts before the wedding. I want to say I noticed something was off. That I felt it in my gut. But that would be a lie. What I felt in my gut every single day for the 14 months we dated was that I had finally gotten it right. He was funny in the specific way I needed, not performing for a crowd, but quietly, just for me. He remembered that I hated mushrooms, that I needed the fan on to sleep, that I always cried at the end of movies even when they were good endings. He seemed to see me. The receipt was a mistake on his part. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe he just never thought I'd go through the pockets of his linen blazer. I wasn't snooping. I was bringing it to the front desk because he'd left it on the terrace chair and the wind was picking up. The paper fell out when I lifted it. Small white thermal paper, the kind from a restaurant. Dated 4 days before our wedding. Dinner for 2. A restaurant in the city where we lived. A bottle of wine I recognized. The specific label he'd once told me was too expensive for no reason. He'd ordered it. The bill was paid on a credit card, a name at the bottom of the receipt that wasn't mine. I stood on that villa terrace with the ocean so blue it looked fake behind me, reading a receipt for a romantic dinner my husband had with another woman 4 days before we got married. Then the woman by the pool said what she said, and I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just turned very slowly to look at her. She was already walking away. I don't know why I didn't confront him right then. Maybe it was self-preservation. Maybe it was self-preservation. Maybe it was something that clicked on inside me, some cold and careful part of myself I didn't know I had. I folded that receipt and put it in the small interior pocket of my beach bag, under my sunscreen. I walked back to our villa. I took a shower. I came out and smiled at my husband sitting on the terrace with a beer and his book. He looked up at me. "Feeling better? You were out there forever." "The pool is perfect," I said. He smiled and went back to his book. That night, after he fell asleep, I lay in the dark with the ceiling fan turning slowly overhead, and I did not cry. I thought about the receipt. I thought about the name. I pulled out my phone and I searched for her, and within 4 minutes, I found her. Her name was on a boutique consulting firm's website. Professional headshot. A woman about my age. And when I searched her name alongside my husband's employer, I found something that didn't make sense. Or maybe it made too much sense. She was listed as a contractor for 2 projects his company had billed in the past year. Projects my husband had led. I kept going. I always keep going when something doesn't add up. It's the thing my sister teases me about. She says I was a prosecutor in a past life. Maybe she's right. By 2 in the morning, with the ocean breeze coming through the screen and my husband breathing slowly beside me, I had found 3 things. The consulting firm she ran had been paid through a subsidiary account connected to my husband's company in amounts that didn't match any normal contractor rate. Her LinkedIn showed a gap year in Barcelona. The same year my husband told me he'd spent 6 months in Europe figuring things out. And her Instagram, which wasn't private, had a photo from that time. A terrace somewhere warm. A man's arm around her shoulder. The watch on that wrist, a very specific vintage Seiko with a cracked face that my husband wore every day, was unmistakable. They hadn't just had dinner 4 days before our wedding. They had a history. A long one. The question was what the history meant now. I thought about the poolside woman's words again. Your husband doesn't know you found the receipt. If he finds out you know, you won't make it home. What was that supposed to mean? Was it a threat? A warning? Who was she? I made a decision. I would not react. Not yet. I would watch. The next morning, I was a perfect wife. I ordered breakfast, I laughed at his jokes, I held his hand on the beach, and I paid attention in a way I hadn't before, because before I'd been paying attention to being happy. Now, I was paying attention to him. Little things started to stand out. The way his phone always went face down the moment he set it on a surface. The way he excused himself to make calls and came back a few minutes later slightly more relaxed than before. Like something had been confirmed, something was on track. At lunch on our fourth day, while he was in the bathroom, his phone lit up with a notification preview and I saw one line before it locked. Just one line. It said, "Everything's still on schedule?" The contact name was a set of initials I didn't recognize. I put my fork down. I picked it back up. I ate my fish taco and looked at the ocean. That afternoon, when he napped, I did something I had never done in our relationship. I looked through his bag. Not his phone. I didn't have the password. His bag. The leather carry-on he used as a daily bag on the trip. Inside, under his passport, I found a folded document. It took me a moment to understand what I was reading. It was a partial draft of something. Financial language, a lot of it dense. But I'd spent 3 years working in a financial compliance firm before I switched careers, and I recognized what I was reading. It was a wire authorization template. For a joint account, our joint account, the one we had opened together 2 months before the wedding for shared expenses, the account I had transferred a portion of my inheritance into, when his accountant suggested it made sense for tax purposes going forward. The document wasn't complete, it was a draft, but the transfer amount written in my husband's handwriting, in pencil, in the margin, was the exact balance of the account. I stood in that villa bathroom with the document in my hands, and I understood, completely and all at once, that my husband had married me for money he planned to take, that the woman on the receipt was involved, that this trip, this beautiful, perfect trip, was not a honeymoon. It was a timeline. I put the document back exactly as I'd found it. I went and lay on the terrace in the sun and I called my sister from my personal phone with my earbuds in, and I told her I needed her to do something for me without asking questions yet. She didn't ask questions. She wrote down the name of the consulting firm. She wrote down my husband's company name. She wrote down the account details I had. And then she said, very quietly, "Sil, how are you?" "I'm fine," I said, which was almost true. "I'll explain everything when I'm home. For now, don't tell anyone you talk to me." I hung up, and I looked at the ocean. A pelican flew across the water. A group of kids were laughing somewhere down the beach. Everything was beautiful and ordinary and completely wrong. That night, I told my husband I wanted to extend the trip. He looked surprised, then pleased. "Really? Just 2 more days," I said, and I touched his arm the way I always used to. "I don't want it to end." His shoulders dropped. The tension I hadn't consciously noticed until it was gone. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, okay. Let's do it." I watched his face. He was calculating something. 2 more days on his timeline meant something to him. I didn't know what yet, but I filed it away. The next morning I woke up before him and I sat on the terrace with my coffee and I looked for the woman in the white uniform. I didn't see her. I asked one of the villa attendants, described her, dark hair pulled back, maybe 40, small gold stud earrings. He thought for a moment and told me she didn't work there. He said he'd been there 6 years and there was no one matching that description on staff. She wasn't a resort employee. I thought about that for a long time. On day 6, I found her sitting at the outdoor bar at noon, in regular clothes this time, a linen shirt and sunglasses. She was reading. I sat down 2 stools away and ordered a sparkling water and I didn't look at her directly. She spoke first. "You didn't leave," she said. "No." "Smart." She turned a page. "He was told you'd want to extend, he planned for it." I wrapped both hands around my glass. "Who are you?" "Someone your father hired 6 weeks before your wedding," she said. "He had concerns. You thought he was being overprotective." I had. My father had made a comment once that he didn't trust my husband's financial background, that something felt off. I had told him he was projecting, that he'd never fully approved of any man I dated, that I needed him to let me live my life. He'd gone quiet and dropped it. He hadn't dropped it. "What did he find?" I asked. "Your husband did this before," she said. 5 years ago. Different state, a woman who also came from a family with money. The account was in both names. She was traveling alone. He convinced her to take a solo trip to visit a friend, and while she was gone, the account was emptied and he was gone. She never pressed charges. She was embarrassed. And the trail was covered carefully enough that it never rose to a criminal investigation. My sparkling water had gone warm. I hadn't touched it. The woman from the restaurant, I said, helps him identify targets. Has for years. She earns a cut. She closed her book. The wire transfer is scheduled for the day after you return home. That's the window. The extended stay gives him a reason to be in a romantic mood, to suggest you both sign a few documents to settle the trip expenses, and one of those documents authorizes the transfer. I looked at the ocean. The water was turquoise all the way to the horizon. What do I do? I asked. You already know, she said. She was right. I ordered another water, and I sat there for a while after she left, thinking about my father, about how I had dismissed him, about how he'd gone and hired someone anyway, quietly, without making it a fight between us. He had just protected me from the side without my permission, because he loved me and he knew something I refused to see. I thought about my husband back in the villa, probably on his phone, managing his timeline. Then I thought about my former manager at the compliance firm, who I still had lunch with twice a year and who I had called exactly once in a professional capacity since leaving, to help a friend who suspected her business partner of embezzlement. She'd been extremely helpful. I texted her now. She texted back in 4 minutes. Call me. I called her. I explained as much as I could in 15 minutes. She told me what she needed. I told her I could get it. She told me she knew a forensic account specialist who worked financial fraud cases, that she'd already put in a call based on some research she'd done after I'd sent her a few things the night before, because I'd texted her from the hotel bathroom at 2 a.m., and she had started working without me asking, because that was who she was. The draft document you found, she said. Did you photograph it? Yes. Good. That's the thread. I went back to the villa. My husband was in the shower. I made us both the drink, his with a little less rum, mine with a little more, and when he came out and kissed me on the temple and told me I looked gorgeous, I handed him his glass and smiled and said, "I'm so happy we stayed." "Me too," he said. He meant it in a completely different way than I did. On our last morning, we packed up the villa together the way couples do. Him joking about how much product I travel with, me folding the sarong I'd bought at the market. Normal, easy. The practiced fluency of two people who had been together long enough to pack a room without talking. Except I was watching every move he made and he didn't know it. At the airport, he was in a good mood. Almost buoyant. He bought us coffees and a bag of chocolate almonds, and he held my hand through the whole first leg of the flight, and I didn't let go. I lay my head on his shoulder. I let him think everything was exactly where he needed it to be. We landed. Drove home. Ordered Thai food because neither of us wanted to deal with unpacking and groceries on the same night. He suggested, over pad thai at the kitchen table, that we deal with a few of the boring financial things tomorrow. His accountant had sent over some forms. He said it would take 20 minutes. Of course, I said. What time? 10? Perfect. He went to bed early. I stayed up. I texted my sister, my former manager, and my father. 3 texts all at once. Then I called the number the woman at the bar had sent me, a direct line to an attorney who specialized in financial fraud and annulments. I talked to her for an hour. At 10 the next morning, my husband came downstairs in a good shirt. He had printed the documents himself. He set them on the kitchen table with a pen, and he smiled at me and said, "This is the boring part of marriage nobody warns you about." He was so relaxed. That's the thing I keep coming back to. He was completely relaxed. I looked at the documents. Then I looked up at him. "I know about the wire transfer," I said. The smile didn't leave his face immediately. It kind of held there, like the face didn't get the message right away. Then it did. "Sile. I know about the consulting firm. I know about the consulting firm. I know about the account draft. I know about what happened in Phoenix 5 years ago." I watched the blood leave his face. "I know she's not a contractor. I know what she is. And I know that the woman who warned me at the pool was hired by my father 6 weeks before our wedding." The kitchen was very quiet. Our neighbor's dog was barking somewhere outside. "This isn't what you think," he said. "Old habit." Automatic. What do I think? I asked. He didn't answer. Here's what happens now, I said. I slid a different document across the table. Not his, mine. You sign this. My attorney files this afternoon. We keep it civil, which means I don't hand everything I have to the DA's office, and you have the opportunity to make restitution for what was already initiated from the account before I froze it. Yes, I froze it 3 days ago from my phone while you were asleep on the beach. I paused. Or you don't sign, and we find out whether what happened in Phoenix plus what happened here adds up to a pattern of criminal fraud. I'm told it does. He stood very still. I loved you, he said, and the worst part was I believed he believed it. I think there was some version of him that had convinced himself of something almost like feeling. I know you think you did, I said. He picked up the pen. He signed. His hand was steady, which surprised me. Maybe he was relieved. Maybe he was relieved. Maybe he was already calculating the next move. I didn't care. What I cared about was that it was over, legally and permanently, before noon on a Tuesday in our own kitchen over cold Thai food leftovers and bad coffee. My father came over that afternoon. He sat at that same kitchen table, and I told him everything, including the part where I had dismissed his concerns, including the part where I told him he didn't trust anyone I loved and it was becoming a problem. He didn't say I told you so. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he just put his hand over mine and said, I'm glad you're okay. I thought about the woman at the bar. I thought about what it meant that my father had quietly, without fanfare, put someone in place to watch over me when I refused to let him do it himself. Dad, I said, why didn't you just tell me what you found? He was quiet for a moment, then he said, because you would have defended him. And you would have been angry at me. And I'd rather you be angry at me, and safe, than write about him and not. That sat with me for a long time. 3 months later, my husband's professional license was flagged during a compliance review, not by anything I filed, but by the paper trail my former manager had quietly passed to the right people, through the right channels. The woman from the consulting firm had her business accounts frozen as part of a separate fraud investigation that had apparently been building for 2 years before it reached them. I didn't watch it happen. I heard about it from my sister, who still follows things I've decided not to. The woman from the resort bar sent me one final message, a few weeks after everything settled. It was short. Your father says you're doing well. I'm glad. I stared at that message for a while. Then I saved it. I don't know exactly why. Maybe because it reminded me that someone was watching out for me, even when I was certain I didn't need it. Maybe because it reminded me that love doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up in a white uniform by a pool and says something that sounds impossible, and you have to decide in about 4 seconds whether to believe it. I believed it. That might be the most surprising thing about the whole story. Not that my husband turned out to be a fraud. Not that there was evidence and a timeline and a plan. The most surprising thing is that when a stranger told me the truth, some part of me already knew it. I just needed someone to say it out loud before I could let myself listen. I was 29 years old on that honeymoon. I am 30 now. The plunge pool terrace is in 300 photos on my phone that I haven't deleted yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll keep them as a reminder of what clarity feels like when it finally arrives. Cold, clean, and nothing at all like what you were expecting.